Usually when we talk about basic math, there's this expectation of absolute, undeniable precision, you know?
Definitely, like balancing a checkbook.
Right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
balancing a checkbook. You have a starting balance, you subtract your expenses, and the number at the bottom is exactly what you have left. It's clean, it's binary, and it's entirely predictable.
Yeah, it's a very comforting way to view the world, honestly. We like formulas, we like guarantees. We
Hmm.
really want to believe that input A minus input B guarantees outcome C.
But then, and this is where it gets messy, you step into the world of human biology, specifically human metabolism and weight loss. And suddenly that basic arithmetic just completely falls apart.
Completely shatters.
Right, you do the math, you subtract the numbers, but the result at the bottom of the ledger makes absolutely no sense. So today, we are doing a deep dive into a text that completely dismantles that strict math equation view of the human body. We're looking at the Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung.
It's a fascinating one.
It really is. And the big premise here, and this is a massive paradigm shift if you've spent any time reading standard diet advice, is that obesity is primarily a hormonal disorder. It is not simply a calorie imbalance. Fung argues that the key driver, like the absolute engine of weight gain, is chronically high insulin levels.
Yeah, and before we go completely down the rabbit hole of cellular biology and hormones here, we really need to establish a very crucial scientific context for you listening.
Good idea. The impartiality check.
Exactly, because while Dr. Fung's practical recommendations, things like cutting ultra-processed foods, reducing refined sugars, prioritizing whole foods, all of that aligns perfectly with mainstream, widely accepted health advice.
Nobody's arguing against broccoli.
Right, nobody is arguing against broccoli. But his core biological claim is heavily debated. The assertion that insulin is the primary overriding cause of obesity and that the whole calorie balance equation is merely a secondary symptom, that is a major point of contention among mainstream obesity researchers.
So the scientific community is somewhat fractured on this fundamental mechanism.
Very much so. I mean, the current broader scientific consensus views body weight as this incredibly complex web. It's an interplay of hormones, certainly, but also appetite regulation in the brain, food quality, genetics, our built environment, and yes, energy balance. The calories in, calories out equation.
Which is why we should make it clear right now that we are not taking sides in this scientific debate today.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Our goal is just to act as your guides to unpack Fung's specific, targeted framework so you can fully understand his perspective, the biological logic behind his arguments, and why this particular framework has resonated so deeply with millions of people who just feel failed by standard advice.
It's really about understanding the mechanism he's presenting.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to think about every diet you have ever tried that ultimately failed. Think about the restriction, the meticulous counting of, like, every single almond.
We've all been there.
Yeah, the temporary success, and then that inevitable frustrating rebound where the weight just comes rushing back. We're going to explore exactly why that happens according to this framework.
We're looking at the broken equations, the hidden biological switches, and how to potentially stop fighting your own physiology.
But to understand why those diets fail, we actually have to take a step back, right?
Yeah.
We need to look at the historical context. Like, how exactly did obesity become a global epidemic? Because it hasn't always been one.
No, this is a relatively recent phenomenon in the grand scheme of human history.
Right.
And what's fascinating here is the historical anomaly that Fung points out. For decades, starting roughly in the late 1970s and accelerating through the 80s and 90s, the leading health authorities, government agencies, the medical establishment, they all coalesced around a very specific set of instructions for the public.
It was everywhere.
Ubiquitous. The advice was unified. Eat low-fat foods, count your calories meticulously, and exercise more.
It was the era of the food pyramid, the whole low-fat craze.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, every product on the grocery store shelf proudly proclaimed it was fat-free. You had fat-free cookies, fat-free yogurt, fat-free salad dressings.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It was. And the underlying assumption was that because fat has more calories per gram than carbohydrates or protein, cutting fat was just the most mathematically efficient way to cut calories.
That was the logic. And here is the critical observation that challenges the whole standard narrative. People generally followed this advice.
Which goes against the whole lazy narrative.
Exactly. We often hear this victim-blaming narrative that the obesity epidemic is simply a result of mass non-compliance, that people just ignored their doctors and got lazy.
Right.
But the epidemiological data shows something completely different. Consumption of dietary fat actually decreased as a percentage of total calories. People enthusiastically bought the low-fat products.
The fitness industry boomed during this time, too.
It absolutely did.
Right.
Millions of people started jogging, joining gyms, obsessively logging their daily caloric intake.
So we followed the blueprint. We literally did what the authorities told us to do.
We followed it almost to the letter. Yet, parallel to this mass adoption of low-fat calorie-counting behavior, obesity rates didn't just inch up, they skyrocketed.
They exploded.
Exploded into a global epidemic.
Which leads to a really uncomfortable conclusion. Because if you follow the instructions on a machine and the machine catches fire, you don't blame yourself for pushing the button.
No, you shouldn't.
You have to question the engineering of the machine itself, or the manual you were handed.
And Fung concludes that the traditional advice we were given was fundamentally flawed because it was treating the symptoms of obesity rather than the root cause.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, we were treating the end result, the accumulation of excess fat, as the entire disease, rather than asking what underlying biological mechanism was driving that accumulation in the first place.
Oh, I see.
And exploring that requires systematically dismantling the absolute holy grail of traditional weight loss advice, which is the eat less, move more paradigm.
The calories in, calories out model.
Exactly.
Wait, let me push back on this right out of the gate, because physics is physics, right? The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So if I put less energy into my body than my body expends, I have to lose mass. It's a physical law.
How can Fung argue with thermodynamics?
Well, the thing is, he doesn't argue with thermodynamics. He argues with how we apply it to biological systems.
Okay.
It is mathematically true that if you consume less energy than you expend, you will lose mass. But the human body is not a closed thermodynamic system like a bomb calorimeter in a laboratory.
Right. It's slightly more complicated than a beaker.
Just a bit. It is a dynamic, living, adapting organism. The fundamental flaw in the calories in, calories out model is the assumption that the calories out part of the equation, your metabolism, remains static when you change the calories in.
So changing one side of the equation automatically alters the other side.
Precisely. Let's look at what actually physically happens in your body when you simply reduce calories. Let's say you decide to arbitrarily cut your intake by 500 calories a day.
Pretty standard diet advice. Right. And according to the simple math, you should lose about a pound a week indefinitely until you reach your goal. But your body perceives this sudden drop in incoming energy as a severe threat.
It thinks you're starving.
Exactly. It doesn't know you want to look good for a wedding. Evolutionary biology dictates that a sudden lack of food means winter has arrived early and the crops have failed. Famine is imminent.
So the body goes into defense mode.
Immediately. First, hunger increases dramatically. And I don't mean a mild passing desire to eat.
Like, oh, a snack would be nice.
No, I mean a deep hormonal gnawing hunger driven by ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Your brain becomes obsessed with food.
Yeah, anyone who's dieted knows that feeling.
And second, and this is the absolute kicker for the math equation, your metabolic rate drops.
Your body actively slows down.
Yes, it actively slows down the rate at which it burns energy. Your heart rate might slow slightly, your body temperature might drop, you unconsciously fidget less.
You feel sluggish, cold, tired. Basically, your body is aggressively fighting the calorie restriction to preserve its remaining energy stores.
That's exactly it.
It sounds like we've been treating the human body like a simple bank account. Just deposit fewer calories and withdraw more, and the balance goes down. But Fung is saying the body is more like a stubborn thermostat in a house.
I love that analogy.
Think about it. If you have your house thermostat set to 70 degrees and you decide you want the house to be cooler, so you just, I don't know, throw open all the windows in the middle of a blizzard.
Well, the temperature in the house will drop temporarily, certainly.
But what does the thermostat do? It senses the cold air, realizes the house is no longer at its programmed set point, and it cranks the furnace up to maximum power to compensate.
Right, it fights the change.
It burns more fuel, works twice as hard, all to fight the open window and get back to 70 degrees.
Right.
But if the body is this incredibly efficient, stubborn machine that adapts to calorie restriction by slowing down metabolism and ramping up hunger, how does anyone ever lose weight and keep it off? Are we just doomed by our own survival mechanisms?
Well, if the thermostat is fighting us every step of the way, pouring more heat into the house every time we open a window, then fighting the temperature directly is a losing battle.
We're just wasting energy.
Exactly. The only logical solution is that we have to stop trying to cool a house by opening the windows, and instead we have to figure out what is actually programming the thermostat in the first place.
We have to find the control panel.
We have to find the mechanism that sets the temperature. And in the human body, that control panel, the communication system that tells the body whether to store energy or burn energy, is our hormonal system.
Which leads us to the main actor in our physiological drama today, the hormone insulin.
The master switch.
Let's break down the mechanics of insulin. We hear about it constantly in relation to diabetes, but what exactly are its jobs when it enters the bloodstream?
Well, insulin is a hormone produced by the pancreas, and it's absolutely essential for life. Without it, you simply cannot survive.
Oh.
We can categorize insulin's primary jobs into three main functions. Its most well-known job is storing glucose. When you eat, especially carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks that food down into glucose, which enters your bloodstream.
And high blood sugar is bad, right?
It is physically toxic to your organs, so your pancreas secretes insulin. Insulin acts like a literal key, unlocking your cells so the glucose can enter and be used for immediate energy.
Got it. It clears the sugar out of the blood. That's job one. But what happens when the cells have had their fill? What about the excess energy?
That is job number two, promoting fat storage. Once your cells have all the immediate energy they need and your short-term storage in the liver and muscles, a substance called glycogen, is completely full, the glucose still has to go somewhere.
It can't just float around in the blood.
Right. So insulin directs the body to take the remaining glucose, convert it, and store it as body fat in your adipose tissue. It's a storage hormone. It tells the body, times are good, food is plentiful, pack away the extra for a rainy day.
Which makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective. I mean, if you stumble across a massive fruit tree on the savannah, you want to store all that energy as fat so you don't starve during the dry season.
It's a brilliant survival mechanism, truly.
There's a third job.
Yes, and it is the third job that is the real kicker and the one that traps people in the modern world. Job number three. Insulin actively prevents fat burning.
Let's pause and double-click on this. It prevents fat burning, like completely.
It biochemically blocks the process of lipolysis. While insulin is elevated in your bloodstream, your body simply cannot access your stored body fat. It shuts down the fat-burning machinery entirely.
Wow.
The logic is elegant if you think about it. Why would your body burn its precious emergency reserves of fat when insulin is loudly signaling that there is fresh energy coming in from a recent meal?
It wouldn't.
Right. It's like going to the grocery store when your pantry is already overflowing. You wouldn't start eating out of your emergency earthquake kit when you have fresh, hot groceries in your hand.
That makes total sense. And this brings us to the core formula of Fung's entire thesis. It is elegantly simple, yet it upends everything. High insulin equals fat storage. Low insulin equals fat burning.
That is the crux of the argument.
If insulin is high, the gates to the fat cells are open for deposits, but locked tight for withdrawals. You simply cannot burn fat in the presence of high insulin.
Therefore, chronically elevated insulin, having high insulin levels all the time, encourages continuous, relentless fat accumulation, regardless of whether you're trying to cut a few hundred calories here or there.
So what is causing our insulin to spike so high and so often? Because clearly this wasn't happening 100 years ago to the degree it is today.
No, it wasn't. Fung points to the primary culprits, the sources of these frequent massive insulin spikes, and they are the absolute staples of the modern industrialized diet.
Let me guess.
Sugar, refined flour, highly processed foods, sugary drinks, and perhaps most importantly, the modern behavioral habit of eating constantly from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep.
Just grazing all day. Think about a typical Tuesday for a lot of people. You wake up, maybe you have a coffee with some sweetened creamer or a bowl of cereal. That is an immediate insulin spike.
Right away.
You get to the office, around 10:30 a.m., someone brought in muffins. You take half of one, spike.
Yep.
Lunch is a sandwich on white bread and some chips. Spike. 3 p.m. rolls around, you hit a wall, you need a pick-me-up, so you have a granola bar or an iced sweet tea.
Spike. Always the afternoon slump.
Dinner's a big plate of pasta.
Spike.
You watch TV, and right before bed, you have a small bowl of ice cream. Spike.
And in that very normal, socially acceptable scenario you just described, that person's insulin levels have been elevated from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m.
Wow.
Their body has spent 16 solid hours strictly in fat storage mode, with the biochemical doors to fat burning completely bolted shut.
So what does this all mean? If insulin stores fat and it prevents fat burning, what happens when we constantly bombard our systems with these insulin-spiking foods day after day, week after week, year after year? The body has to react to that constant bombardment. You can't just passively accept this chemical yelling forever.
It does react, and it reacts in a way that creates a massive compounding problem. This is where we delve into the concept of insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance.
Yes, this is what happens when the cellular system burns out.
Explain what that burnout looks like at a cellular level. How does this cell, resist a hormone?
Okay, think about insulin as a messenger trying to deliver a crucial package to a cell. The message is open up and take in this glucose.
Okay.
If that messenger knocks on the door occasionally, say 3 times a day at meals, the cell hears the knock, opens the door, takes the package, and everything works perfectly.
Makes sense.
But if insulin is constantly pounding on the door, shouting that message all day, every day, for years, eventually, the cell gets exhausted by the noise. To protect itself from being overstuffed with glucose, it starts to put in earplugs. It removes some of the receptors from its surface. It physically stops responding to the signal.
It's like living next to a train track. At first, every time the train goes by, it drives you crazy. But after a few years, your brain tunes it out. You don't even hear it anymore. The cells are literally tuning out the insulin.
The scientific term for this is downregulation, but the practical term is insulin resistance. The cells are now fiercely resistant to the effects of insulin.
But wait, the glucose is still in the bloodstream? The person is still eating the pasta and the muffins? The toxic high blood sugar is still a very real physical threat. So what does the body do when the cells stop listening to the insulin?
This is where the pancreas goes into absolute overdrive. The pancreas senses that the blood sugar isn't dropping fast enough. It doesn't know that the cells have put in earplugs. It just assumes it hasn't sent enough messengers. So what does it do? It pumps out even more insulin. It tries to shout louder and louder to overcome the resistance.
Let's map out this vicious cycle so you can see the trap. We start with high insulin, driven by our modern diet of refined carbohydrates and constant snacking. That high chronic insulin forces the cells to protect themselves by developing insulin resistance.
Right, and to compensate for that resistance, the pancreas produces even higher amounts of insulin to force the toxic blood sugar down into the cells.
But remember the core formula. High insulin equals fat storage. So now you don't just have high insulin, you have supercharged, abnormally high insulin levels circulating in your blood all the time.
A condition called hyperinsulinemia.
Right, and this massive amount of insulin leads to even more aggressive, relentless fat storage.
And, cruelly, that incredibly high level of insulin bombarding the cells creates even more insulin resistance over time, which prompts the pancreas to produce even more insulin.
It is a terrifying loop. High insulin leads to resistance. Resistance leads to higher insulin. Higher insulin leads to more fat storage and more resistance. Round and round it goes, like a death spiral.
It really is. And this completely recontextualizes the profound struggle of weight loss.
Sure.
Obesity and insulin resistance mutually reinforce each other. They trap the person in a biological loop where their body is perpetually chemically locked in fat storage mode.
It's not a character flaw.
No,
Well.
It is not about lack of willpower. It is not about being lazy. It is about a hormonal system that has been driven into a state of chaotic positive feedback.
And if you're trapped in that cycle, trying to lose weight by just cutting out 300 calories a day of your normal diet is like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon.
Exactly.
Your hormones are screaming, store fat, at top volume, 24 hours a day. The hormonal signal completely overrides the caloric deficit. Your body will just slow down your metabolism to match the lower caloric intake, preserving the fat stores because the insulin is still high, demanding that those fat stores remain untouched.
So if the sheer amount of food isn't the primary lever, we have to look at the type of food. We have to explore a concept that completely breaks the traditional rules of dieting. We have to understand why a calorie is not just a calorie.
This is a major mental hurdle to clear. If you have been raised on the idea that weight management is purely an accounting exercise of energy in and energy out, the idea that the source of the calorie matters more than the calorie itself feels like scientific heresy.
It does, but let's use a specific thought experiment to illustrate this. The 500-calorie showdown.
Okay, I'll have a showdown.
Picture this. On one side of a table, you have a giant 500-calorie serving of sugary soda. On the other side, you have a plate of eggs totaling exactly 500 calories.
All right.
Now, if we strictly apply the traditional calories in, calories out model, the body should treat these two plates exactly the same. 500 units of thermodynamic energy is 500 units of thermodynamic energy. The math is identical.
But I'm going to push back on that math using just basic common sense and lived experience. If I drink 500 calories of soda, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'll get a quick rush, and I am probably going to be ravenously hungry again in about 45 minutes.
Oh, absolutely.
It won't satisfy me at all. But if I sit down and eat 500 calories of eggs, which is like 6 large eggs, I am going to be absolutely stuffed. I'll be full until lunch, maybe even mid-afternoon. If the energy math is identical, how does my body physically, biologically distinguish between the two?
Well, that lived experience is exactly what the hormonal theory validates. The body distinguishes between the two because different foods produce radically different hormonal responses. Let's trace the biology here.
Okay, trace it.
When you drink that 500 calories of soda, you are ingesting pure liquid sugar. It hits your stomach, requires almost zero mechanical digestion, and floods directly into your bloodstream. Your blood sugar rockets upward instantly.
And the pancreas panics and dumps a massive tidal wave of insulin into the blood to deal with it.
A massive insulin spike. And remember the formula, high insulin equals fat storage. The insulin forces all that energy into your fat cells as quickly as possible, but here is the catch.
There's always a catch.
This rapid clearing of sugar from your blood causes your blood sugar to crash shortly after. This crash triggers the release of ghrelin, the hunger hormone.
Ah, so that's why you are ravenous an hour later.
Yeah.
Your body aggressively stored the energy, locked the door to the fat cells, and is now crying out for more energy because the blood sugar has plummeted.
Exactly. Okay, now let's trace the biology of the eggs.
All right, the 6-egg plate.
The eggs are composed almost entirely of protein and fat. When you eat them, your body has to do significant mechanical and chemical work to break them down. It's a slow, steady digestive process.
No instant flood into the bloodstream.
Right. The glucose response is minimal to non-existent. Therefore, the insulin response is very small, very gradual. You get a steady release of amino acids and fatty acids over hours. Your insulin stays low.
And because it stays low, your body is still permitted to access stored fat if it needs more energy.
Yes. Furthermore, the protein and fat trigger the release of a hormone called leptin, which signals satiety to your brain. You feel full.
Same calories, completely different insulin response,
Okay.
completely different hunger and satiety hormone response, and ultimately a completely different outcome in terms of fat storage. It really proves that food quality matters immensely. It's about the hormonal instructions the food gives your body.
Precisely.
Let's run through the specific macronutrients, starting with the biggest offender. Sugar, and specifically fructose. We all generally know sugar is bad, but why is it biologically so uniquely damaging in this framework?
To understand this, we have to look at the molecular structure. Table sugar, or sucrose, is actually composed of two different molecules bound together, glucose and fructose.
Okay, glucose and fructose.
We've talked about glucose. It circulates in the blood, spikes insulin directly, and virtually every cell in your body can use it for energy. Your muscles use it, your brain uses it. But fructose is entirely different.
Now, fructose is the sugar found naturally in fruit, right? But it's also the main component of high fructose corn syrup, which is pumped into almost all highly processed foods.
Yes. And the critical biological difference is that almost no cell in your body can use fructose for energy directly. Your muscles can't use it, your brain can't use it.
Really? None of them?
Right. When you consume fructose, it bypasses the normal energy pathways, and 100% of it goes straight to the liver to be processed.
Wow. Every single gram of fructose you consume is like a targeted delivery straight to your liver.
Exactly. Now imagine the liver is a factory that can only handle a certain amount of raw material per hour. If you eat a whole apple, the fructose comes packaged in a dense matrix of fiber.
Right. It takes time to chew, time to digest.
Right. The fructose trickles into the liver slowly and the liver handles it easily. But if you drink a massive 32-ounce soda or a giant glass of fruit juice where the fiber has been completely removed, you are dumping a massive unmitigated load of fructose onto the liver all at once. The liver gets completely overwhelmed.
And what does an overwhelmed liver do with a flood of fructose it can't process?
It engages in a process called de novo lipogenesis. It converts that excess fructose directly into fat. And not just body fat, but specifically fat inside the liver itself.
Inside the organ?
Yes. This excess fructose intake is the primary driver of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And here is where the track snaps shut. A fatty, congested liver becomes deeply, profoundly insulin resistant very quickly.
So fructose doesn't just spike insulin. It actively breaks the metabolic machinery, causing insulin resistance at the source, which then drives obesity system-wide.
It's like pouring sludge into the engine.
Man. So you have to aggressively limit the major fructose bombs.
Yeah?
Soft drinks, sweets, and significantly fruit juice, which people often mistakenly think is a health food. But without the fiber matrix of the whole fruit, fruit juice is just a rapid-fire fructose delivery system.
It really is.
What about carbohydrates that don't taste sweet?
We have to look closely at highly refined carbohydrates. This is the sneaky category. White bread, biscuits, pastries, noodles, most boxed breakfast cereals.
Because people often don't think of a bagel as sugar.
But biochemically, once they hit your digestive tract, highly refined carbohydrates behave almost identically to pure sugar. The industrial refining process has stripped away all the fiber, all the bran, all the complex cellular structures that would normally require your body to do the work of digestion.
So it's basically pre-digested starch.
Essentially, yes. When you eat a bowl of refined pasta or a white flour bagel, it digests incredibly quickly. The glucose hits your bloodstream so rapidly that it results in a massive insulin spike, almost as if you had eaten spoonfuls of straight table sugar.
Which is why, in this framework, if you are going to eat carbohydrates, you need to prefer them in their natural packaging. Vegetables, legumes, minimally processed whole grains, foods that are high in fiber. The fiber is the physical barrier that slows down digestion, stretches out the glucose release, and flattens that insulin spike.
That's the goal, flattening the spike.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What about protein? Because protein kind of sits in the middle, right? It's not a free pass on insulin, but it's fundamentally different from refined carbs.
Protein is fascinating. It does provoke an insulin response. The body needs insulin to help push amino acids into the cells to build and repair muscle tissue. However, the insulin response to protein is moderate, and crucially, it is accompanied by the release of other incretin hormones that strongly promote satiety and fullness.
Wait, let me stop you. If protein spikes insulin, shouldn't we avoid it if we want to keep insulin low?
It's a matter of biological context here. It triggers insulin, but it simultaneously triggers the "I'm full, stop eating" signals, which sugar absolutely does not do.
Oh, right.
You will naturally stop eating a steak much sooner than you will stop eating potato chips. Furthermore, adequate protein is absolutely crucial during weight loss to preserve lean muscle mass. You want to lose fat, not muscle.
Right, because muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns calories just existing. Losing muscle lowers your basal metabolic rate, making long-term weight management much harder. So protein is generally beneficial and essential despite the moderate insulin response.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the most controversial macronutrient historically.
Yeah.
Fat. For decades, dietary fat was public enemy number one because it is the most calorie-dense macronutrient. A gram of fat has 9 calories, while a gram of protein or carbohydrate has roughly 4. If you view weight purely through the math equation of calories, fat is the worst thing you could possibly put in your mouth.
But through the hormonal lens, the picture completely flips.
Why?
Because pure dietary fat causes almost zero insulin response. None.
None.
Eating a piece of avocado or a spoonful of olive oil or a pat of butter does not spike the fat storage hormone.
That is mind-bending if you grew up in the 90s during the fat-free craze. But let me push back here. Are you saying I can eat 10,000 calories of olive oil a day and not gain weight because it doesn't spike insulin?
No, absolutely not. Fung is not saying calories don't exist, nor is he saying thermodynamics is a myth. If you force-feed yourself 10,000 calories of pure fat, your body will store it.
Right.
The point is about how hormones direct the energy. Fat doesn't actively lock the door to your fat stores the way insulin does. More importantly, fat is incredibly satiating. In the real world, you naturally self-regulate. You couldn't drink a cup of olive oil without feeling nauseous.
Fair point.
Healthy fats like olive oil, nuts, avocados, natural dairy, they drastically improve satiety. They make food taste good, they make you feel full, and they don't pull the insulin trigger. They are a crucial tool for naturally regulating appetite.
So we know that sugar and refined carbs are the heavy artillery that spikes insulin. Protein is a necessary building block that triggers satiety, and healthy fats are neutral on the insulin scale. We know what to put on the plate.
The plate is important, yes.
But if we stop there, we are still missing a massive part of the picture. Because you can have the perfect diet, you can eat salmon and broccoli every day, but if the rest of your biological environment is chaotic, your hormones will still drive fat storage. We have to expand the framework beyond the plate and look at the role of cortisol.
Cortisol. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. We hear a lot about it in pop psychology, but its metabolic effects are profound.
Evolutionarily, cortisol is a survival mechanism.
Yes.
Ah.
Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer and a tiger jumps out of the bushes. Your brain instantly floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. It is a biological alarm bell. Cortisol's job in that moment is to instantly flood your bloodstream with glucose, pulling it from your liver store so your muscles have immediate explosive energy to either fight the tiger or run away.
Fight or flight. It's a short-term, acute response designed to save your life. The tiger jumps out, you run, the stress is over, the cortisol drops.
Exactly. But here is the problem in the modern world. We aren't running from tigers.
We're sitting at our desks, getting an angry email from our boss, or worrying about credit card debt, or dealing with an agonizing gridlocked commute.
Exactly. We are experiencing chronic, low-grade psychological stress all day, every day.
So that biological alarm bell is just constantly ringing in the background.
And because it's ringing, our body is constantly trickling extra glucose into our bloodstream to prepare for a physical fight that never actually happens. You sit at your desk, stressed out, blood sugar rising. And what happens when blood sugar is chronically elevated by stress?
The pancreas has to release insulin to deal with the sugar.
Exactly. Chronic stress leads to chronically high cortisol, which leads to chronically elevated blood sugar, which leads directly to chronically high insulin.
Which, as we know, equals fat storage.
Yes.
And cortisol has a very specific target for that fat storage, doesn't it?
It does. High cortisol levels specifically encourage the accumulation of visceral fat, the dangerous inflammatory fat that gathers deep inside your belly around your abdominal organs. Furthermore, chronic stress actively alters your brain chemistry to increase appetite and drive intense cravings, particularly for highly palatable, sugary, and fatty comfort foods.
Seeking that dopamine.
Your brain is desperately trying to soothe the stress response with a dopamine hit from food.
It's a double whammy. Cortisol chemically stores fat around your organs, and it chemically makes you crave the exact foods that spike insulin even more. And we can't talk about stress without talking about the ultimate ubiquitous stressor on the human body, poor sleep.
Sleep deprivation is a massive physiological stressor. Studies show that just a few consecutive nights of poor sleep can drastically increase baseline cortisol levels and create measurable, significant insulin resistance in otherwise completely healthy people. Your body interprets exhaustion as a state of vulnerability and scarcity.
So weight loss isn't just about what you eat. It's about the physiological state your body is in when you eat it. If you are sleep-deprived and stressed, your body is primed to store every calorie it can as fat. This perfectly segues into the conversation about genetics.
A huge topic.
We often hear people say, I just have bad genetics, obesity runs in my family, there's nothing I can do. How does Fung address the nature versus nurture debate?
Well, Fung acknowledges that genes play a significant role. It would be unscientific to deny it. Genes absolutely influence your baseline appetite, your basal metabolism, and your natural fat distribution. Some people are genetically predisposed to be leaner, and some are genetically predisposed to hold more weight.
But there is a huge logical flaw in blaming the current obesity epidemic entirely on genetics.
A massive flaw. Our human genetic code takes tens of thousands of years to change significantly. Evolution is incredibly slow. Yet the obesity epidemic exploded globally in the span of a single generation, roughly from the late 1970s to the 90s. Our DNA did not suddenly mutate en masse in 1980.
Right. Genetics alone simply cannot explain the rapid modern rise in obesity. So how do we reconcile the fact that obesity clearly runs in families, but genetics didn't cause the epidemic?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Fung uses a brilliant metaphor here that perfectly synthesizes this complex interaction. He says, genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Wow. Genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. That makes so much sense.
Your DNA might give you a heightened susceptibility to insulin resistance. It might make you genetically more sensitive to the effects of refined carbohydrates. That is the loaded gun.
But if you live in an environment where you are eating whole foods, managing your stress, getting 8 hours of sleep, and keeping your insulin low, the trigger is never pulled.
The genetic tendency is never expressed. It is our modern environment, the ubiquitous ultra-processed food, the chronic stress, the sedentary sleep-deprived lifestyle that is actively pulling the trigger on those genetic vulnerabilities.
Which brings us back to the concept of the set point theory. This goes right back to that thermostat analogy we used earlier.
The set point theory posits that the body actively defends a preferred weight range. It has an internal thermostat for your body fat, regulated primarily by hormones like insulin and leptin.
And if you just try to starve yourself by radically dropping your calories, like throwing open the windows in winter, your body fights back to defend that set point.
It fights back fiercely. Hunger rises, metabolism plummets, fatigue sets in. The body will do everything in its power to return you to your previous weight, your set point.
Which explains the tragic reality of so many extreme diets. People lose 30 pounds through sheer willpower, white-knuckling through intense hunger and starvation, but their set point hasn't actually changed.
No, it hasn't.
Their hormones are still screaming at them that they are 30 pounds underweight. Eventually, the willpower breaks, as it biologically must, and they regain all 30 pounds and often 5 or 10 more because their body is terrified of another impending famine and overcompensates.
This is the ultimate lesson of the hormonal framework. Successful, sustainable weight loss requires fundamentally changing the body's regulatory signals. You have to reprogram the thermostat, you have to lower the set point, and the only way to do that is to lower the hormone that dictates the set point, insulin.
Okay, so we now know what to eat to manage insulin. Whole foods, healthy fats, adequate protein, minimal sugar. And we know we need to manage our stress and sleep to keep cortisol in check. But Fung argues that there is still a massive behavioral blind spot we all have.
Yes.
Even if you eat the perfect foods, there's another critical lever you have to pull. We have to talk about the when of eating.
This is a critical pivot in understanding the complete picture. It's not just about what is on your plate, it is about the timing of your meals. This brings us to the modern snacking trap.
Think about the massive cultural shift we've experienced. If you go back to the 1950s, 60s, or even the 70s, the standard was 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Snacking between meals was actually frowned upon. If you asked for a snack at 3 p.m., your mother told you, no, you'll ruin your dinner.
It was culturally unacceptable. But today, snacking is practically mandatory. We have snacks for toddlers, snacks for elementary school recess, mid-morning office snacks, afternoon pick-me-ups, pre-workout snacks, post-workout snacks, bedtime snacks.
Entire aisles of the grocery store are dedicated strictly to snack foods. We've normalized a culture of constant, continuous grazing.
And from a hormonal perspective, why is that constant grazing so catastrophic? Because every single time you eat, regardless of what it is, but especially if it contains carbohydrates or protein, you stimulate an insulin response.
Wait, even a healthy snack? Like, if I eat an apple and a handful of almonds, I'm spiking insulin.
Yes. It might be a smaller spike than a candy bar, but you are still triggering insulin. Now, look at the biological rhythm. If you eat 3 distinct meals a day, your insulin spikes during the meal, and then it has several hours to fall back to a low baseline before the next meal.
Yeah.
During those gaps between breakfast and lunch, lunch and dinner, and especially overnight, your body enters a low insulin state. That low insulin state is the biochemical trigger that opens the fat stores and allows your body to burn fat for energy.
But if you're snacking all day...
If you're snacking all day, your insulin goes up at breakfast, starts to dip, but then you have a mid-morning snack, so it spikes again. It starts to dip, then lunch, then a 3 p.m. snack, then dinner, then a bedtime snack. Your insulin is artificially kept elevated all day long.
Which means the biochemical door to your fat cells is locked shut 24 hours a day. The body rarely, if ever, shifts into fat-burning mode. You're constantly in a fed state, a storage state.
The key lesson here is incredibly straightforward. Reduce unnecessary snacking. We have to give our bodies distinct periods of time where they are not digesting food, allowing insulin to drop so fat burning can commence.
Before we move to the ultimate solution Fung proposes for this, we have to touch on artificial sweeteners. Because the immediate thought people have is, okay, no sugar, no snacking, I'll just drink 0-calorie diet soda all day to get me through between meals.
Fung's take on artificial sweeteners is cautious, and he points out a fascinating evolutionary quirk. While they don't contain calories and they don't spike blood glucose directly, there is evidence suggesting that the intense sweetness can still trigger a mild insulin response, known as a cephalic phase response.
A cephalic phase response. Explain that mechanism.
Cephalic means relating to the head. When your tongue tastes something intensely sweet, your brain evolutionarily assumes that a massive dose of sugar is about to hit the stomach. So to be efficient, the brain preemptively signals the pancreas to release a little bit of insulin to prepare for the incoming sugar load.
It's like a biological false alarm. The brain tastes sweet, sends out the insulin troops, but the sugar never arrives.
Exactly. But that false alarm still puts insulin into your bloodstream, which can blunt fat burning. Furthermore, there is significant concern that artificial sweeteners influence appetite and eating behavior. They keep the psychological craving for sweet things alive, and they may alter the gut microbiome in ways that actually promote metabolic dysfunction over the long term.
So they are a crutch, not a cure. If you want to maintain a truly low insulin state between meals, water, unsweetened tea, and black coffee are unequivocally the safest bets.
Which brings us to the logical conclusion of this entire framework. If constant eating is the problem, then the logical biological solution is deliberate periods of non-eating. This is where Fung introduces his primary and most famous practical recommendation: intermittent fasting. Fasting. The word itself can sound intimidating, maybe even a bit extreme or dogmatic to some, but in the context of this hormonal framework, it is the most elegant, natural, and historically normal solution possible.
It is the physiological opposite of the constant grazing culture. Fasting is simply the conscious decision to allow longer gaps between meals. And the mechanics of why it works are perfectly aligned with everything we've discussed today. When you fast, you are consuming 0 calories and 0 nutrients that require processing. Therefore, your blood sugar drops, and most importantly, your insulin levels fall drastically.
And remember the core formula: low insulin equals fat burning. When insulin drops low enough and stays low for a sufficient period, the body receives a clear, unambiguous hormonal signal that no energy is coming in from the digestive tract. It has no choice but to unlock the doors to the fat cells and start burning stored body fat for fuel. Fasting naturally, organically lowers insulin in a way that simply restricting calories while eating 6 small meals a day never will.
What are the common protocols he discusses? Because it's not about starving yourself for weeks on end in a cave.
Not at all. Fung discusses several very approachable protocols. The most basic is a 12-hour fast, which mostly happens while you sleep. You finish dinner at 7 p.m. and don't eat breakfast until 7 a.m.
Which, frankly, used to just be called normal eating before the late-night snacking craze took over.
Precisely. It gives your body 12 hours of metabolic rest. Then there is the very popular 16-8 method, where you fast for 16 hours, perhaps skipping breakfast and only eating between noon and 8 p.m. He also discusses occasional 24-hour fasts, like fasting from dinner to dinner the next day, for those who are fat-adapted and looking for deeper metabolic benefits.
The potential benefits he outlines are massive. Obviously, reduced insulin levels and increased fat burning, but he also talks about metabolic flexibility, the body's ability to smoothly transition back and forth between burning sugar from food and burning stored body fat. A body trained by fasting is an efficient, flexible machine, not one that crashes the moment blood sugar drops.
Now, we need to pause here for a critical medical caveat. This is absolutely essential. Fasting is a powerful biological tool, and like any powerful tool, it is not appropriate for everyone.
Let's make this very clear.
Dr. Fung is explicit about this, and we must reiterate it. Fasting should not be attempted by pregnant or breastfeeding people or by children and teenagers who are still growing and developing. It is strongly contraindicated for individuals with a history of eating disorders.
And importantly, anyone with existing medical conditions, especially those on medications.
Absolutely. If you are taking medications for blood sugar, such as exogenous insulin or sulfonylureas or blood pressure medications, fasting can dangerously alter how those drugs act in your system. Fasting can cause severe hypoglycemia if you are medicated for diabetes. Anyone in these categories must avoid fasting or strictly seek direct medical supervision from their doctor before attempting any changes to their eating schedule.
Safety first, always. But for the general, healthy adult struggling with metabolic issues, Fung presents fasting as a powerful, free, and accessible way to directly target the hormonal root cause of weight gain. All right, with all these incredible pieces on the table, we've dismantled the calorie myth, we've explored the master switch of insulin, we've broken down food quality, the liver's reaction to fructose, the insidious nature of stress and sleep deprivation, and the profound timing of when we eat. How do we synthesize all of this? How do we put this into a practical, actionable plan for you, the person listening right now who wants to step off the diet roller coaster today?
Based on a balanced interpretation of Fung's text, we can synthesize the biggest ideas into a rapid-fire, practical action plan. 6 core steps.
Let's run through them. Step 1. Prioritize minimally processed, high-fiber foods. You want foods in their natural state. Vegetables, legumes, whole grains. Let the natural fiber be your defense against the insulin spike.
Step 2. Ruthlessly reduce sugary drinks, sweets, and refined grains. These are the insulin bombs. They're the primary drivers of the vicious cycle of insulin resistance. Cut the soda, cut the juice. Cut the white flour.
Step 3. Eat enough protein and healthy fats. Protein supports your lean muscle mass and keeps your metabolism active. Both protein and natural fats provide the necessary satiety signals like leptin to tell your brain you are full, so you naturally eat less without forced restriction.
Step 4. Avoid constant snacking unless it is medically necessary for you. Try to return to distinct, separate meals. Give your body a break from digestion. Stop keeping the insulin switch turned on 24 hours a day.
Step 5. Look beyond the plate. Get adequate sleep and actively manage your chronic stress. You cannot out-diet high cortisol. If you are sleeping 4 hours a night and living in a state of constant panic, your body will fight to hold on to fat as a survival mechanism.
And step 6. If you are interested in intermittent fasting and you do not fall into any of the contraindicated medical categories we just discussed, start conservatively. Don't jump into a 24-hour fast. Start with a simple 12 to 14-hour overnight fast. Just try not eating after dinner, see how your body feels, and always discuss longer fasting routines with a healthcare professional if you have any doubts.
This book is a lot to take in because it challenges so much of what we thought was settled science. It asks us to look at our bodies not as simple calculators, but as complex, highly sensitive chemical ecosystems.
And that is the ultimate takeaway. Sustainable habits matter far more than short-term crash diets. Understanding that weight management is deeply hormonal and not just a moral failure of willpower should be incredibly liberating. It removes the shame and changes the battle plan. This raises an important question, though. If our biology is this profoundly sensitive to environmental inputs, what else are we missing?
Exactly. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we've discussed today. If our bodies are this exquisitely sensitive to environmental signals, if the timing of our food and the invisible weight of chronic stress can completely rewrite our metabolic set point, we have to wonder about the other invisible signals in our modern environment. If poor sleep spikes cortisol and disrupts our fat-burning hormones, how might our 24/7 exposure to artificial lighting, the blue light of our phones, and late-night screen time be secretly acting as an obesogen? Could simply living in a biologically unnatural, constantly illuminated world be disrupting our circadian rhythms and keeping our physiology in a state of perpetual hormonal confusion long after we've put down the fork?
It is a profound question about the fundamental mismatch between our ancient biology and our modern world.
Something to think about the next time you are scrolling late at night. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hormonal realities of the human body. We hope this has given you a new lens through which to view your health and maybe a little more grace for yourself in the process. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to Explainivo. See you in the next video.